Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome back. Happy Monday. I couldn't be more excited to introduce you to the most esteemed guest. I love her. She's amazing, a good human, a prolific author, a professor. She's a senior research fellow at the Kinsey Institute, chief scientific advisor to Match.com, which ironically is where we met in the fall of 2012. Dr. Helen Fisher, welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast.
Bela, thank you. I mean, I remember when we met, and you've traveled far, as I figured that you would, and here we are talking about something really important, which is love. So why don't you, big question, what is love? Yeah, everybody has a different opinion of what love is, and everything from the poets to the astronomers. But, because I'm an academic, first of all, it's got a lot of characteristics. I mean, when I I wanted to put people in brain scanners, as you know, and find the brain circuitry of this intense human drive. And it is a drive, by the way. I mean, you got a lot of thoughts, you got a lot of feelings, emotions, but it's basically a drive. It comes from the most primitive part of the brain that associated with focus and motivation and craving and obsession. And of course, it evolved so that we could fall in love and send our DNA into tomorrow. So it's a very strong, by the way, I'm assuming you're talking about romantic love, because I do
romantic love.
Yeah. Because I think, as you know, we've evolved three distinctly different brain systems for mating and reproduction, sex drive being one, feelings of intense romantic love being the second, and feelings of deep attachment being the third. So romantic love. So here are the basic traits of it that I've collected from, 50 years of reading poetry and academic papers. Anyway, first thing, when you fall in love, by the way, the very first academic article I wrote about romantic love, I submitted it, and one of the 4 peer reviewers wrote back and said, "You can't study love. It's part of the supernatural." And I said, hang on here. Fear's not part of the supernatural. Anger's not part of the supernatural. Happiness is. Why wouldn't this be? I mean, people live for love. They kill for love. They die for love. They pine for love. That was one of the most profoundly basic feelings that we've ever evolved. So anyway, here are the basic traits of romantic love. The first thing that happens is a person takes on what I call special meaning. Everything about them is special. The car they drive is different from every car in the parking lot, the street they live on, the music everything about them
is amazing.
It is. And then you focus on them. I mean, when I put people in the brain scanner, I would say, well, what do you not like about him or her? They could list it, and then they just swept it aside and just focused on what they really liked about him or her. High energy, you can walk all night, talk till dawn. Euphoria when things are going well. Mood swings into horrible despair when it's going poorly. All kinds of bodily reactions, weak knees, butterflies in the stomach, dry mouth. Real emotional dependence. I mean, as Walt Whitman once said, he said, "Oh, I would stake all for you." I mean, you wait by the phone, you check your emails, you do your text messages, just emotional dependence on this person. Real separation anxiety, you don't like to be apart. What I call frustration attraction. I made up the term. Basically, it's when they don't call, when they don't write, you just want them more. It's like going down to the basement to get a candy bar out of some machine and there's no candy bars. Now you're willing to walk 10 blocks to get a candy bar. In the same way, when it's frustrated, and we know the brain circuitry of that. When you can't get what you want, you just want it more.
You want it more.
Yep. But anyway, certainly possessiveness, jealousy. In academia, we call it mate guarding. Sexual desire, you really want to kiss and hug with this person. But even more than that, the three main characteristics of romantic love are craving not for sex, but for emotional union. You want them to hold. You want them to ask you out. You want them to say that they love you. So emotional craving for emotional union, intrusive thinking. Somebody's camping in your head, and if they just camp, you wake up thinking about them, you go to bed thinking about them, they are in your head.
Obsessed.
Yeah, it is an obsession. It's an addiction. We've proven that. And the last thing is you're highly motivated to win the person. So the three main traits are craving for emotional union, obsessive thinking, intrusive thinking it's called, and high motivation, plus all these other things. Last but not least, it's involuntary. It's like thirst and hunger. In fact, you can't control thirst and hunger, and you can't control the feeling. You can try to control not going to your text messages and giving them your 13th message in the hour, et cetera, et cetera. But the actual feeling is quite involuntary, which made me realize, and now I've proven this, but the actual feeling comes out of a tiny little factory near the base of the brain called the ventral tegmental area, or the VTA. That little, which makes dopamine and sends that dopamine to many brain regions, giving you the focus, the energy, the euphoria, the bodily reactions, the craving, the obsessive thing, etc. But that little factory, the VTA, lies right next to the factory that orchestrates thirst and hunger. Thirst and hunger keep you alive today. Romantic love drives you to form a partnership and send your DNA into tomorrow. So it finally occurred to me, I figured that it was an emotion or a whole pile of emotions. It's a drive. It's a mating drive that evolved millions of years ago and will surely be with us as long as we survive as a species.
So interesting. And I think, was it you that said lust is nature's way of tricking us into attachment?
I wasn't, but I wish I had. But I would actually not even agree entirely, because, that's the third of these emotions. I mean, there's the sex drive, there's feelings of intense romantic love, and there's feelings of deep attachment. And I think you can easily have sex with somebody you're not in love with and never want to attach to. I do think it's romantic love, which is Mother Nature's wicked Mother Nature, that when you fall madly in love with somebody, that will often lead on to feelings of deep attachment.
In our practice at Smart Dating Academy, one of the things that we do in our coaching is to help people choose people that are good, romantic, long-term partners for them long-term. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't know if I can help who I'm attracted to. Like, what do you think about that? I have an opinion on it. I think we can, but I want to hear it from you, the expert.
Well, I'd like to hear from you too, because you're an expert. I think in the beginning, when you suddenly realize that somebody is really a genuine alcoholic or a real liar, or just you can't really, I think you can walk away. Absolutely. Yeah. I do think I think you can walk away from something that is very intense. It's just hard.
It's hard.
When we put people in that, our first experiment was we put 17 people who were madly in love and happily in love into the brain scanner. And the second was people who had been rejected in love. And in both cases, we found activity in the main brain region linked with addiction, the nucleus accumbens. This is the brain region that becomes active with any addiction. All of the substance addictions, everything from alcohol and cigarettes to cocaine and heroin, and all the behavioral addictions, everything from gambling addiction or sex addiction. So this is the basic brain region linked with all the addictions. And sure enough, it is highly active when you're madly in love, even if you know perfectly well this is wrong, and all your friends tell you it's wrong. But basically, I think we learn, say, oh, no, I'm not doing that one again. Forget about it. What would you say?
I'm curious. I love this nucleus accumbens. So what you're saying is it feels like an addiction. So even if for example, this salt, if this is not good for you, right? But suddenly you're getting a lot of dopamine. You're getting flooded with dopamine at this point. So even though this is bad for you, you still go back for more.
Exactly. And I've done it myself. I've walked towards the phone in the old days, before email. And I said, don't call him, Helen. I mean, really, Helen, just don't call him, Helen, as I'm punching those buttons, and then all the drunk dialing that people do.
Right.
And there's this eternal hope that maybe this could work out. I mean, my twin sister was madly in love with a guy for 10 years. He dumped her. And she looks back at it now and says, thank God it didn't happen, And she went out with other men and everything, but he was always really in her heart. And the beauty of it, Bella, is when you finally reach indifference. No longer, you don't care anymore. I mean, you might like but you certainly remember them, I've studied rejection and put people in the scanner, and you don't kill the memory of it, but you kill the feeling, the craving, the drive, the obsession that goes with that memory.
Yeah. Yeah. And that probably to some extent might be a function of time, I'm guessing, and like staying away from the person.
You got it. You got both of them. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that I say when you've been rejected in love, treat it as an addiction. Throw out the cards and letters. Don't write. Don't call. Don't show up. Don't ask your friends about them. Go do novel things with other people. That'll drive up dopamine. Get hugs from friends. That'll drive up the oxytocin level. But you're absolutely right. We've proven it in the brain that time does heal. And because when you have been rejected in love, we find in the brain scanner activity in the same ventral tegmental area. You're pumping out the dopamine. You're feeling the intense romantic madness. We'll also find activity in the brain region linked with deep attachment. And as time goes by, so we put people in the machine who had only been dumped 3 weeks ago, and people who had been dumped 17 months ago, and still couldn't get over it. But we found that the longer you get away from that final moment of rejection, the less and less activity there is in it's called the ventral pallidum, a brain region linked with feelings of attachment. So the attachment recedes.
Okay, so the old adage, time heals all wounds, has some truth to it. Yeah, absolutely.
No, you still remember it, but it doesn't have that impact, thank God. I began to wonder, why do we go through such troubles? Why? Isn't it, from a Darwinian perspective, a little maladaptive to suffer for months or years when you've been dumped by somebody who really wasn't any good for you? And then I began to think about it. And I said, well, nobody else has suggested this, so I got to think about it. And I thought, right, well, certainly you've lost your daily habits. You might have lost when you've been dumped, right? You've certainly lost your daily habits and rituals. You probably have lost some friends. You may have lost your home or the dog or the cat or even children. You may have lost the rituals at Christmas or whatever, where you go annually. You don't know if your neighbors still like you, et cetera, et cetera. But what you've really lost is an opportunity to reproduce. If you're young and you are hoping to have babies with somebody, you have jeopardized your ability to send your DNA onto tomorrow. And if you have a husband or somebody and children or a wife, and the person leaves, you've lost a parenting partner. So from a basic biological, I mean, not only do you suffer from the cultural problems of lack of money, lost the house, lost the dog, lost the kid, lost the this and that, but you've jeopardized your genetic future. And this is why we suffer so much.
Yeah. No.
The day comes, there's basic stages to rejection. I mean, first is shock. Takes about 2 weeks of shock. And then hope. You hope for this. And then comes protest. You fight back, I mean, women will try to understand. They'll try to compromise. They'll try to seduce. Men will try to make the woman jealous by going out with somebody else or showing off their money or this or that. And when the protest doesn't work, then you slip into the next stage, which is resignation and despair. And that's when men particularly will hole up and watch TV, drive too fast, drink too much. Women will talk incessantly about it. and that's a problem. In the beginning, it's good to make up your story and get it out. But they talk so much that they're just resurrecting the ghost and re-traumatizing themselves. But anyway, after this rejection stage comes indifference and finally post-traumatic growth. And you say to yourself, I'm not doing that again.
Right. We hope.
We hope. We hope.
We hope. And then you look at the divorce statistics, right, which are 40 to 50% for first marriages, 67% for second marriages, 75% for third marriages. It's like, okay, we hope we're going to grow. And this kind of loops back to what we were talking about. Can you choose who you become attracted to? And I think over the last 14 years, we've seen, yes, you can. When you date consciously, you might be driven to find someone who, I mean, if we get, Freudian, let's say, that's like my father or like my mother or like my brother. But if you become not just aware of that, but then if you're actually going to take action around it, right? So we will literally be in our clients, they have dating scorecards and graphs and things to really help them through the process of red flags, but really saying, okay, I think you're going down the same bad path again. Instead, we have them look for what we call, it's our new trademark called elevator people. We have them define the elevator people in their life, the people that elevate you, that make you happiest in your happiest relationships. Define those characteristics. And then we're going to start to prioritize those and how you want to feel. So what happens is it's like the red sweater effect. If I say, Helen, go into a party and tell me the 17 people that are wearing red, and you'll say, okay, or tell me how many people are wearing red. You might come back and say, okay, there's 17. I'm like, but how many people were wearing purple? And you're like, you told me to look for red. I didn't look for purple. And it's the same thing that when you start to prioritize different things, I tell my clients, it's like putting on a new set of lenses. What you focus on will come into focus ultimately. So if you're looking at something that doesn't feel as compelling in the beginning, but you stay the course, you focus on this, you give this, like you'll let a bottle of wine breathe for an hour before you have a dinner party. Let the dates breathe. Give this person 3, 5, 6 dates. Take it slowly. So you had asked before, I do think, I wouldn't say it's easy to not repeat old patterns and kind of have someone not good for you light your flame and want to walk in that direction. But with conscious effort and a plan, I think you can choose people that are really good for you.
I think that's very cool. Yeah. I really, really think that's very cool. And I do actually think that some societal trends are helping that. And I wrote a lot about this. I coined the term slow love.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you. The fact that, 50 years ago or so, women married around age 21 and men married around age 22 or 23. Now women are marrying at age, it says this is the average or the median actually, marrying around age 28, 29, and men are marrying around age 30, 31. And the point being that there's this long period of what I call the pre-commitment stage of relationships is so much longer. And what they're doing, a lot of people are doing, is just trying people out. And they're, before they marry and before they have the babies, they're going to get rid of what they don't want, learn more about themselves so that they can now focus on what they do. And just to your point there about 5 or 6 days, I've looked in 80 cultures for the demographic yearbooks of the United Nations, and the longer you court and the older you are when you marry, the less likely you are to divorce. Data on 3,000 Americans that said if you court for 1 to 2 years before you marry, you are 20% less likely to divorce. And if you court for 3 or more years before you marry, you're 39% less likely to divorce. And that's what we're seeing around the world. This slow love, getting to know yourself, trying people out, getting rid of what you want before you got a family with that person, and moving on. And my hypothesis is that if you live, spend a good deal of time with somebody before you marry, by the time you walk down that aisle, you know who you got, you want who you got, and you think you can keep who you've got. And all the data show that that's the truth. And I think it's one of the reasons that I'm very happy about where we're at right now. We got people like you giving you a roadmap, which is brilliant. I loved what you just said. But also you've got time. The society is no longer pressing the young. I mean, I remember, my husband has a son who's 24. Well, I don't know, 50 years ago, he would be regarded as, long in the tooth for marriage. I mean, and now we say to him, you're too young. You have much to learn and figure out and try out before you. And I think that's the general attitude. And I think it's a very healthy attitude.
I love that. And just on a side note, you are somewhat recently married. Tell us about, we want to hear your love journey. The love gurus fell in love and got married.
Isn't that amazing? Bela,
it's amazing.
It is. First of all, I married him at age 75.
Oh.
And 3 years ago. And as you can see, I'm very spry. I'm still very middle-aged, all that. You're not old till you're old. But anyway, I really wasn't looking to marry. Here I am, probably pretty well known for studying love, and I had 3 very long and really wonderful partnerships. And I've had many opportunities to marry, and I've chosen not to. And, but anyway, I'm crazy about this man. I mean, nuts about him. We've been going out for 9 years. I'm still in love with him. By the way, we've proven that. We must talk about what happens in the brain in long-term, real happy marriages. But anyway, the bottom line is, so we went out for about 5 years, and then he asked me to marry him. And I said to him, I said, well, I mean, this was before he got down on his knee. When he got down on his knee, it was very romantic, but this was before that. And he said, well, I'm going to marry you, Helen Fisher. He said that one night at dinner. And I said, that's interesting. Well, I would marry you, of course, but I'm not moving in. And I have not moved in. Now, he lives up in the Bronx. I live in Manhattan. I have a small apartment. He's got a nice big one. But, 2 or 3 nights a week, I like to go out with my girlfriends. I like to go to the theater. I like to do this and that. And he loves to sit there and read or watch sports, etc. So I don't know if that, I always intended to give him anything I had. I had never had any intention of leaving him ever. But I hadn't thought of marrying him. And I say to him, sweetheart, why is it different that we're married? Because for me, it really isn't different. I like his name better than mine. I haven't changed it, but I'm too old for that. But I like his name better. And there's times that I go with his last name, which I really like. But no, I've always felt that same intense feeling. But he says it's richer and deeper. And that's what it is to him. But I should tell you this one, I don't know if you have time for a story, but
absolutely,
it's a charming story. Well, he had been he worked for the New York Times as a writer for 21 years, and he had interviewed me several times in the past, and I knew him, but I never put the make on a journalist, and he doesn't put the make. Anyway, the bottom line is we were both invited to a very fancy ranch way in the mountains. You have to either walk in 11 miles or take a horse and wagon, because it's right on Yellowstone, between Yellowstone and another national park, so you can't go in motorized. Anyway, this fellow, our good friend of ours, invited us separately. I mean, I barely knew him. His name is John Tierney. And during that week, I really liked him, but I wasn't going to make any moves. But anyway, the bottom line is he offered to give me a ride back to the Bozeman airport. So we were the only two in the car. And it was a 2.5-hour drive. During the course of this, he tells me that he's going through this terrible divorce, which he was. And then he says, I'm never going out with I'm never getting serious about another woman. I'm never going to. And I think to myself, geez, I'm the only one in the car. He's trying to tell me something.
Is this a message? Are you telegramming me?
Exactly. And part of me was charmed that he was so honest, and part of me was hurt.
Yeah.
But anyway, so for about a year, he would invite me to the opera. He'd invite me to this place, and every 6 weeks, and then he'd walk me to the subway, give me a big hug, and I'd go home alone. So after a year of this, he invited me to go out to dinner and walk the High Line, which is a beautiful walk in middle of Manhattan, and then go play pool. So I said, fine. And I don't know, Bella, what came over me. I had not planned this before. And we were having our drinks, and I pulled the cocktail napkin out from underneath my drink. And I said to him, why don't we just secretly write down what we would like to have if we win at pool on our cocktail napkin. So I wrote down on mine, a real kiss. I was really fed up with the hug.
And this is a year.
This is after
a date a month, basically.
After a year. And I didn't know what he'd written down. So we go play pool. And sure enough, he had grown up with a pool table in his basement. I probably played pool 5 times a night. He creamed me. So I opened his cocktail napkin, and it wrote, sex and clarity. And I said, okay, I got the sex part, but what do you have in mind for clarity? And basically, he wanted friends with benefits. And I said to him, we started walking uptown. It was way too late. It was like 3 a.m, way too late to start anything. And I said to him, listen, I study love. And when you start to have sex with somebody, you can drive up the dopamine system and fall in love. Are you willing to take that chance? And he said, yes.
Wow. And did you ask yourself, am I willing to take?
I was totally for it. I was totally. Oh no, I was after him, but
you're ready to hop in.
I was ready to hop into the whole enchilada. And then after about 3 months, this is, I think, maybe helpful for your listeners. After about 3 months, but he had a son, and he was a single father. He had to get home for dinner. I understood why he wanted the friends with benefits. He'd gone through a horrible divorce, really bad. And he and his son just weren't ready for anything. So he would come over in the afternoon, we'd kiss and hug, and we'd go out for dinner. So it wasn't quite friends with benefits. And then he'd go home, which was okay. Anyway, I was madly in love with him, of course. And after about 3 months, he said to me, Helen, I just can't take any more. I can't take anything. I'm so overwhelmed with this incredible problem with this wife, and being a single father. We'll have to break up. I said, okay. I was
3 months into this new sex and clarity relationship.
Yes, it was the end of everything. And I sat at the edge of my bed and cried and played songs to kill yourself by. But Bela, I never called, I never wrote, and I never showed up. And during that period of time, he came to understand that here was a woman that wasn't going to pin him to the floor, that he would be free to come back if he wanted to. I mean, I didn't think he would ever come back. I believed him. But he learned that I wasn't going to be a clingy thing. And about 6 weeks later, he wrote me a note and said, I think I made a terrible mistake. So then I thought to myself, well, okay, made this mistake. What should I do now? Should I invite him back over in the afternoon?
Do we pick up where we left off, John?
Which I did, and finally, and we're extremely happily married. You can remain in love long term. I have proven that in the brain.
Wow. Have you guys been in the scanner?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you're like, I have proved this. I'm like, you went in?
Well, what I did, I actually put myself in the scanner before. We've put over 100 people in the scanners studying various things that I always felt that I should go in first before I put anybody in. I thought it would be unethical, actually, to, you lie in there with your head in a bit of a vice for, an hour. I mean, we make you very comfortable, warm blankets, pillows under your knees. I really prepare people, but nevertheless, I had been in, but no, I didn't even know him. I went in 2003 when I started my brain scanning. But anyway,
wow,
with 17 people who were in their 50s and 60s. They were all married an average of 21 years, and they all kept coming into the lab saying to me, I'm still in love with her, not just loving, but in love with her. After these long marriages, Americans don't believe that you can remain in love long term. They say, oh, it moves into attachment and that's that. That's not true. You can remain in love as well as deeply attached, because we put these 17 people into the brain scanner and sure enough, did exactly the same experiment that we did with the people who had just fallen happily in love, young people. And we were able to see exactly the same pattern in the brain. Now, there was one difference. We saw exactly the same activity in the ventral tegmental area, pumping out the dopamine, giving you that elation, euphoria, giddiness, etc. We found also, of course, a great deal of activity in brain regions linked with attachment and the sex drive. But what we didn't find was activity in a certain part of the insular cortex, a little area linked with anxiety. When you have just fallen madly in love, you're anxious. What did I say that for? Am I too fat? Am I too thin? I shouldn't, what should I wear?
Right.
You're anxious. You're just anxious. And of course, after 21 years of marriage, people are no longer anxious. Although I must say, there are times when I'll say something to my husband, and then I think later about it, I say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And I do get anxious, but I think that's because I'm still in love with him.
Yeah, because you care, you love. You never want to hurt.
No, and you don't want to get anything on the wrong foot. And
oh no, if I wasn't so deathly afraid of MRIs, that's a whole nother. I crawl out of tubes all the time. I'm a terrible claustrophobe.
And so am I.
Oh,
yeah.
Like if I think about it,
yeah,
I literally go into panic. And someone said, well, you can take some Xanax. I'm like, you don't know my brain. I think it would need general anesthesia.
By the way, I've told all the people that, I don't even, after I die, I don't want them to put me in a box.
Yes. No, cremate me, please. The Indians, we cremate.
Absolutely. Put me in the ocean. You
Right.
know, I'll feed the fish, but I'm not sitting in a box, even if I'm dead. No, and I had to, and so I had to put myself in. And by the way, before I put anybody else in, I just thought it was, I said, unethical. And so I did go in, and I used a line from Shakespeare's King Lear. And the line is, at one point, is, that way madness lies. That way madness lies. And then I would say, Helen, don't touch the sides. Don't look at the sides. You know, but the guy that runs the scanner he said, Helen, you're not that claustrophobic, because somebody like you, Bela, probably can't even look at the machine.
I can look at it. I'll look at it, but as soon as I go in to right here,
you're dead.
I'm like, I gotta get out. I gotta get out. So, so I am going to get an MRI on my lower back, but I found my girlfriend, who's also claustrophobic, told me there's a sitting machine that you can go to up in the suburbs.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Chicken. But I would love to be.
Back, your head and shoulders probably would not be in it.
No. And you're sitting in a little machine. I'm like, okay. But I think I love everything you've done. That's amazing that people can be in love in their 50s and all of the regions light up like the newly in love people in their 20s or 30s, I'm guessing. But the ones that have been married longer have lower anxiety. How beautiful is that?
Isn't it beautiful?
It's amazing.
We were built, by the way, to to have good relationships. I'm sure you know this, but people in good relationships live 5 to 7 years longer, and they're just plain old healthier. I mean, in a good positive relationship, it lowers blood pressure, lowers cholesterol and cortisol, the stress hormone. You sustain your mood and your memory and mental agility better when you have a long, solid, real good relationship. When you get hugs from somebody, it's driving up the oxytocin, giving you feelings of calm and security. As you laugh with somebody, it's driving up the dopamine system, and that's boosting the immune system and even boosting the endorphins for less pain. And when you play with somebody, there's brain growth. And, we were built to love. We were built to love. And people will say, well, why, after the years of reproduction, why would it have been adaptive to sustain this brain system for romantic love? And basically, it's because having this kind of positive experience. I mean, let's dial back a million years on the grasslands of Africa. You're traveling a little hunting and gathering group, and you're in your 60s. And if you've got somebody who you can trust and confide in, who respects you, who makes you laugh, who spends enough time with you, but also gives you those hugs for the oxytocin and the laughter that drives up the dopamine, and you can play with them, it's good for the whole band. It's good for the whole neighborhood if people are in good, have somebody. By the way, you were talking about divorce. It's so interesting. The worldwide, I looked at divorce it was one of my books in Anatomy of Love. I looked at divorce, of course, all over the world. And the worldwide attitude that seems to be most expressed is summed up by the Mongol people of Siberia, who say, if two people cannot live harmoniously together, they had better live apart.
Wow.
And of course, for millions of years, we lived in these little hunting and gathering groups, and it would have been very maladaptive to have people fighting and screaming at each other and, hurting each other, etc. And so we've evolved this tremendous need to find the right partner and enjoy the right partner and actually leave when things are no goddamn good. So
I love that.
These days we actually can. On the farm, you were really stuck. You really can't cut the wheat field in half and move it out of town. You can't cut the cow in half, I mean, these days, at least you can divide a $10 bill, and divide the money for the house, et cetera, et cetera. So actually what's really happening is we're moving forward to the kinds of partnerships that we had a million years ago. In a million years ago, men and women were really economic equals. Women needed to gather their fruits and vegetables. They came home with 60 to 80% of the evening meal. The double income family was the rule. And either the man or the woman could walk out if they needed to and find a happier partnership. We're moving forward to the past, really. And I'm very excited about it.
I am too, as we guide people through their relationships, right? Once they, through our coaching process, once they find an exclusive partner, then it's, are we in alignment? Is this person really an elevator person for you? And we've, miraculously had 0 divorces in 14 years.
Oh, divine. Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Since the inception of the company. Now, not everybody wants to get married, but those that do, what's interesting, Helen, is many people that say, I don't need to get married again. I don't want to get married. When you meet the right person, they're like, you know what? I do want to do this, because what did John say? It's richer
and deeper.
And deeper. And you feel that when you meet the right person. And I tell women, especially at this point, and we coach a lot of women, that relationships where we're true partners, where the Venn diagrams of what's traditionally male and traditionally female have a closer intersection, those relationships become more healthy long-term. To your point, I said, think about being in a car. You both have your driver's licenses. You can both drive, but you can also switch and be the passengers. That's a great relationship.
That's
if
lovely.
You need to drive, you can drive. And when you're sleepy, he can drive, and vice versa.
Lovely. Yep, that's lovely. And I mean, my relationship is absolutely charming, absolutely delightful. And you know what? Let's say when we're on the subway and he'll give me a kiss, I rather like people seeing an older couple being romantic with each other. I'm tired of thinking that older people are not. Yeah, this is a brain system that lasts all your life. And, I'm sure you have people who are older. Do you have people who are older?
A significant part of our population are singles over 50, and that's why when people ask me, what do you think about the Golden Bachelor? I'm like, it's about time. Right? Doesn't the data show that 35 million of the 118 million singles are over the age of 50? I'm like, that's a sizable part of the population. If you strip out, 18 to 28, it becomes an even more substantial percentage of the population. And speaking of that, I wanted to go back a little bit in detail, if you don't mind, about the people that have been happily married for over 20 years and their brains light up in the same way. Are there things that contribute to that, like things that we can do in our relationships that, whether, dear listener, you're in a new relationship, you've been in a relationship for 2 years, or you're like me and you've been married over 20 years?
Wonderful question. And I've got what I think is just a wonderful answer about the brain. It's not my answer, it's the brain's answer. I just stumbled onto it. But anyway, we put 17 people into the brain scanner. We did exactly the same experiment. And of course, before you put anybody in a brain scanner, well, with us anyway, we give them lots of questionnaires. And one of the questionnaires was a questionnaire on happiness. And so after putting the 17 people into the FMRI brain scanner, and found that sure enough, they were still in love, deeply attached, sex drive was cooking along, etc. We looked at those who were really happy. We compared those who scored very high on our happiness scale with what happens in the brain. And this is what the brain says about long-term happiness. Psychologists say a lot of wonderful things about what keeps a happy relationship together. This is what the brain says. three brain regions became activated. A brain region linked with empathy, a brain region linked with controlling your own stress and your own emotions, and a brain region linked with overcoming the negative, positive illusions. There's a huge brain region linked with what's called negativity bias. We are built to remember the negative. And that's been adaptive for millions of years. Let's say you and I were walking along in the grasslands of Africa, I don't know, 500,000 years ago. And it was great that you liked me and I liked you. But if we forgot the girl that didn't like us, we could die. I mean, you could go to a party and everybody will say, oh, this, that, next. And then one person will say, have you gained a little weight? What do? You go home, that's all you remember. We remember the negative for good evolutionary Darwinian reasons. And activity in that brain region with remembering the negative, with negativity bias, reduces. So you're able to overlook the negative. So empathy, controlling your own stress and your own emotions, and the ability to overlook the negative, positive illusions. And for example, in my life, my husband's a brilliant man, and he's truly hilarious. I mean, it's an outstanding trait of his, and he's wonderfully sexy. He's just got it all. But he cannot turn out a light. He just simply can't turn out a light. And I got some fancy lights in here where you just don't turn the bulb, but you got to get all kinds of screwdrivers and open big fancy things. I want the lights turned out. He can't turn out a light, just can't turn out a light. So first I said, sweetheart, could you turn out the lights? That didn't work. Then I said, well, I gave him some, if you turn out the lights, then da-da-da-da-da. That didn't work at all. And then I started to bargain with him. And I finally said, Helen, give up. Just go turn out the light. And as I go turn out the light, I say, well, he didn't turn out the light, but he's so hilarious. He's so charming. He's so good looking. He's so interesting. He's so sexy. I'm just overlooking the negative.
Oh my gosh. And I bet if I asked you to make a list of the people in your life that make you happiest and make you feel really good about yourself, I bet you he'd be number one on your list.
Oh, no question about it. It'd be 1 through 5, 1 through 25.
John, the quintessential elevator person.
Yes, absolutely. No, I want that for everybody, and people like you, giving them a map. I think that was very interesting. I didn't know all that. And do you also sort of say to them, look, you're going down the wrong road here?
Every day. Every day. Like, hey, you have a penchant for narcissistic men or women, or this person is showing clear signs of being avoidant, right? And a lot of these people, everybody looks great when the sun is shining, right? Everybody can look great. A wolf in sheep's clothing looks like a sheep, right? Everybody. And this gets back to something we talked about in the beginning. How do you know if this person is good for you or not? Time and repeated exposures.
Right. Absolutely. I once read something that I have no idea whether it's true or not, but that you really don't get to know somebody until about over 17 months in a relationship. And then, of course, whenever there's a crisis, you get to know a whole lot more about them. And it's so funny because I think an awful lot of people, I think we have a very enlightened citizenship these days. I think that people, I do this annual study with Match called Singles in America.
I love it.
Yeah, we don't poll the Match members. It's a national representative sample, so it's real science. And only every year we ask, obviously we ask what you're looking for, and whether you are looking for a long-term partnership. Only about 11% ever say, I just want to date casually. People are looking for real relationships, men as well as women. And we started out talking, we don't understand men. I don't think we understand women either, but all of my data shows that, men fall in love faster than women do. They fall in love more often than women do. When they meet somebody who they are in love, they want to introduce them to friends and family sooner. Now, from a Darwinian perspective, that would be called mate guarding, saying, look, she's mine. And men are 2.5 times more likely to kill themselves when a relationship is over. There are women's magazines seem to think that women are the romantic people. Actually, men are somewhat more romantic than women are. I think also for good reasons. I mean, for millions of years, women had the very dangerous job of carrying a baby for 9 months and then delivering that child. And so women, I find over and over, we've got data now on over 60 million Americans through the Singles in America study. We've been doing it for 12 years. Women are the picky sex, not
100%.
men.
100%. 100%. We coach men and we coach women. And I know one of the first questions I ask them as we get to this elevator person concept is describe your dream man, if it's a woman looking for a man, or describe your dream woman. And it's funny, I did a TEDx talk about this a couple of years ago, the secret to finding lasting love. And I said, the number one thing that over 1,500 women have said to me, like the number one characteristic of their dream guy. Can you guess what it is?
Well, they say respect and somebody I can trust and confide in. That's what they say on the Singles in America. What do they say to you?
Tall. Tall, ideally over 6 feet. And so I'm thinking, at first I thought these could have been a few red herrings. And when I started the business in 2009, and then, by 2014, 15, I'm like, I think we're sitting on a good repository of data here that show tall is really significant or taller than me. Ideally, over 5'10", over 6 feet. And now I, like quoting statistics, like if that only 12 to 14% of US men are over 6 feet tall. So if you think about percentage multipliers and you put 100 guys in a room, and I tell this to my clients, and if you say, I'd like him to be over 6 feet, you've opened the door and you've asked 88 of them to leave.
Yes.
Now you're left with 12. Now you want a particular decade, maybe a particular ethnicity, a particular education level, and just basic barriers, and what happens and how quickly we can narrow down a population of 100,000 to 3, right?
Exactly.
And they're like, that's depressing. I said, but it's not depressing. It's just math. So know that love is going to come to you in an unexpected package, and look at dating as a treasure hunt, right? When you focus on something different, looking for elevator people, different people are going to start to become attractive to you. So isn't fun. So, but the tall thing always cracks me up.
Well, my hypothesis is I'm not positive, but I think it may be built with the testosterone system, but I'm not sure. But I do know mathematically that tall men tend to raise higher in the social ladder, get better jobs, and make more money. And from a Darwinian perspective, if a woman is looking for tall, she wouldn't tell you this, but nor does she know this, but for millions of years, she probably would have had a partner who could provide more for her children.
Yeah.
So it's an adaptive mechanism on some crazy level. In this whole realm of crazy things that people want, I once on the Singles in America study asked, what are the first things you notice in somebody? And, I had 30 boxes. You could check everything, anything. The top 3 things that people notice, the very first things, is their teeth, their grammar, and their self-confidence. So we sat around at Match and said, wow, what could that be about? And it began to occur to me, oh, wow, your teeth show your age. And some of your eating habits. Your grammar shows your socioeconomic background and education, and your self-confidence shows your psychological stability. So all of these things like tall or teeth or something, they ring true when you understand how we evolved. We evolved women want a good partner to help them raise their babies. And they got to have somebody the right age. They got to have somebody the right background for them. And they pretty good to have somebody who's self-confident. And we naturally do this. So tall, put now into Darwinian perspective, makes more sense. But 100%. Then again, you're not going to get everything. I mean, my guy can't turn the lights out. Okay, that's fine. He can't turn the lights out. He's got other things instead. But, we're trying to find life's greatest prize, a mating partner. No wonder somebody will whittle it down from 10,000 to 3. Now, it's not realistic. And that's where you come in and give them the map and get them figuring out where they're doing some crazy thinking.
Right. And it's sometimes it feels like a bucket of ice at that moment poured on their heads. But I'm like, but get excited, because when we cast our net out a little wider and focus on qualities that are going to make this relationship happy and last we've had no divorces. Think about how exciting this is going to be. Different people are going to start to become attractive to you.
Exactly. And, I was going out. I remember I was going out with this guy. He was really cool guy, but he was short and overweight and balding. And I remember walking in Central Park, and he was walking, and I just beginning to get to know him. And he was walking towards me, and I said, how could I like this guy? I mean, this is ridiculous. And 3 weeks later, I thought he was the prettiest animal on the planet.
Oh, I love that.
Negative, positive illusions. We're built to do that when you love, and you can overlook all kinds of things. You just have to keep overlooking them.
Right. That becomes hard when we get into that negativity bias, right? And you got to pull yourself back out of that. And
exactly.
It's a conscious effort.
And absolutely. I have a wonderful friend who, Amy, and her husband once wrote on the bathroom mirror, positive illusions.
I'm sure my husband's going to listen to this. And I'm like, why does nobody in this house turn the lights off? Right. I grew up with parents. They were immigrants. They saved every cent. It's like you walk out of a room, you turn the lights off, or somebody's going to be berating you at some moment. Right. So now that's in me. Turn the lights off, turn the lights off. And so I get it. And now I literally say, he's a good man. Turn the lights off yourself.
Good for you. Good for you. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. You are.
I mean, there's, I'm not a techie, and my husband wants me to put what's going on a mutual calendar on the computer. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask me. But all my life, I've just written it in my little address book, which I cart with me everywhere, and I just don't get to it. And it's my fault. It's my fault. So anyway, I even bargained with him. I even said, if you turn the lights off, I'll put things in the calendar. Didn't work.
Didn't work.
Neither of us did it.
Right. I think we should make t-shirts, positive illusions.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea. That's a wonderful idea. It's so charming. That's very charming.
Are there any other gems you want to leave us with?
I guess I'd like to say just a couple things about online dating and the two big mistakes that people make. The first big mistake that they make, and I know you know this, but they may not have heard it, is that people binge. And the problem with binging is that the brain is not built to absorb more than 5 to 9 options. And after about 9 options, you choose nobody. So if I would say that if you're going to do online dating, and I am very much for it for various reasons, what I can tell you, don't binge. That's number one. And the only other second one is think of reasons to say yes instead of no.
Mm.
He likes dogs, you like cats, forget it. I mean, if it's really obvious, then but we do have this negativity bias. And you've got to realize that the brain is tricking you a bit. So don't binge. Think of reasons to say yes instead of no. And, do a decent profile. 68% of people actually really do read that profile.
Did you guys hear that, dear listener? They do read your profiles. It's not just your photos.
No, by far. Do your spell correctly. Get your grammar right. Get some good pictures of you. And don't have pictures of you kissing a girlfriend in the past. I mean, forget it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could say, and I don't want to keep you with it. But avoid the cliches. I mean, these people who start with, well, I like, long walks at midnight on the beach. Well, we all do. There's nothing new there, Don't be specific, instead of I'm a caring person, say, well, I get up on Saturday morning early and work in a food kitchen or whatever, a soup kitchen or something. So, I mean, work on that profile. So that it really represents who you are. Ask Bela what she thinks of your profile.
During COVID, I used to hire writers that would write our clients' profiles. And I always thought if I could train people how to write these profiles that had never met my clients, I could probably write a workbook to do this. So during COVID, with extra time on my hands, I actually put together a workbook with 8 different questions and lots of, examples of good profiles. And so now what I love is that our clients, which can range from age 22 to, believe it or not, 82, they've all taken this workbook and they all write these amazing profiles that can be gone boop, right on match. So it's awesome. So yeah, you're right. If you guys need some help, get into our one-on-one coaching practice, because as Helen and I both know, peak dating season is coming up around the corner in December. I can't believe it, right?
I know. I can't either. But anyway, and so I guess the very last thing, that I would end up saying is that, there's a million things to talk about, but the bottom line is, love is eternal, adaptable, and primordial. It's always going to be with us. And anytime that you can find the right partner, 82 is perfectly fine to find the right paper. I did it at 75. It's totally possible. And you're just going to live a happier, longer, healthier life.
And so be hopeful. Love can come to you.
Absolutely. You just got to try. It does take some work.
It takes some work and positive illusions about online dating.
There you go. But
right?
Even getting onto the dating sites, it does take some work. But as I say, you're trying to win life's greatest prize. So it's all worth it.
I love it. And being an advisor to Match and knowing the gizzards of online dating, I love that you connected with someone that you had known in real life for many, many years. And let it grow, and you traversed the ups and the downs with patience, and there were those wrenching moments, and you made it through. And now I can sense how happy and in love and peaceful you are.
Thank you, kid. I definitely am. And I wish it for everybody else. And by the way, I'll probably write a memoir sometime. And I've really learned so much more about love in my 70s. I've been writing about this, Bela, since I was in my early 20s. I got my PhD studying this, and here I am finally figuring it out. It's worth it.
You're in the arena.
I'm in the arena this time, and I'm sticking with it.
Oh, thank you so much for honoring us and me with being a guest on the podcast. I'm so grateful. My soul is elevated.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. I'm enriched, kid. And tell me, how does one get that workbook? Is there a way to get the workbook? Could you sell it?
We don't yet. It's part of our one-on-one
That's
process
nice.
for our clients. Yeah, they really like it. And the first time it worked, it was a 73-year-old from the south side of Chicago that filled it out. And I kid you not. And I was so nervous, like, is it going to work? And when she says, Bella, here's my profile for the workshop, I read it and I broke down in tears in our kitchen. And my husband's like, what are you crying about? And I said, it worked. It worked.
It worked. It worked. Well, what about the map? Did you write that in a book? The map of how they go and, find a partner? You got some.
Should I do this? Should I do it?
Oh, God, yes. Absolutely. I think it's a magnificent idea. Oh, sure. I'm interested.
Oh, well, I love that. Well, I will have you.
It won't even put you out of business, I don't think. Because I don't know. You got to think about all that. But so many people would be, they'd buy it for their daughter. They'd buy it for their son. They'd, even if they're not looking, and even if they don't need any advice themselves. You're in the greatest profession on earth. Finding love is essential to happiness.
I can't imagine any other work. I started this company 14 years ago. I wish I would have been in my 20s like you when I started, but I can't imagine any more work. And I'm sure you feel this way, that gives you more purpose than helping people find the lid to their pot and understanding how to do that. And yeah. I'm so grateful that you shared so much of your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Bella.
Smart daters, be inspired. Love can come to you at 25, 35, 75, or heck, 95. There's no holds barred here. So keep that psychotic optimism going. Have positive illusions about your own dating life, even though it might feel like the Sahara Desert right now. I want you to keep the faith that at one point, I promise you, somebody's going to show up in your life, either as a match in your inbox, or maybe somebody that you've known all your life, or maybe somebody that's going to set you up on a date with, and it's going to be your last first date, I promise. So keep the faith that that person is out there. And remember, as a psychotic optimist, love will come to me. It's a when, not an if. Go write that in red lipstick on your bathroom mirror if you need that optimism. So we'll see you next week. And thank you again, Dr. Fisher.
Thank you. I'm delighted.